That voice wasn't over the comm. It echoed in the empty foyer, soft and light, but full of menace. I peeked over the top of the wall. Shaky was pivoting the bulky suit of armor, bringing his gun to bear on the source of the voice in the doorway behind him. Fia stood there, framed by the opening to the elevator, a smoking pistol laying beside her, her clothes thrown to the ground, her body contorting and writhing as she shifted forms. Crap, the DCP was going to have a field day with this one. She was halfway through the change when he opened fire on her. Fia dropped to all fours and broke into a run, her lengthening claws cutting into the marble tiles and giving her traction on the highly polished floor. She moved like something primal, acting purely on instinct. She launched herself up, jumping to grab onto a pillar and climbing up to the ceiling, disappearing into the smoke that had coalesced in the high ornamental timber rafters. A howl rang out, the sound of scratching and thuds as she moved around, high up in the grey haze, out of sight.
"You brought her here?"
Shaky yelled out accusingly.
"I knew you were desperate, but—"
He was cut off as Fia dropped from the ceiling, landing atop the suit. Her claws sunk into the black metal, and she held on tight as the goblin tried to shake her loose. He thrashed from one side to the other, but she wasn't going anywhere. She opened her mouth and began to gnaw on a shoulder. Despite the severity of the situation, it did look a little bit like a dog trying to play with an oversized toy. Losing her grip momentarily as she tried to change positions, Shaky took advantage of the moment, throwing her to the ground and bringing the multiple barrels to bear on her. There was an eruption of noise, bullets thudding into flesh, and a pained howl. It wasn't going to slow her down though, even at point-blank range. This wasn't some runt of the litter Delta-level threat like Sam had been. She healed fast, and she moved faster. Even in her injured state, it took a lot to slow down an alpha wolf. Twisting about on the floor and lashing out with her claws, she caught the gun in one huge hand. The other came out, claws extended, metal screeched, and sparks flew. She had found a weak spot, either on purpose or by accident, it didn't matter. But I like to think my sister was in there, giving the beast a few prods in the right direction. Servo motors squealed as they failed to move the bulk of the arm that Fia had just severed the connection with. I looked back to Reva, who was tucked up tight against the wall beside me, clutching her ribs. "How you doing there, babe?"
"I've had worse, but I can't say I'm enjoying this."
"You and me both. Hercule, buddy?" There was silence, except for the sound of Fia trying to rip chunks off the mech suit. "Big fella?" Hercule coughed.
"Sorry, I was re-evaluating my life choices."
"How you holding up there, buddy?"
"You know, I didn't realize how much blood I had until it started vacating my body."
There was the sound of another bottle being opened again. "How bad is it?" I asked, panicked.
"Don't worry, I sealed it. Hurts like a bitch. Hence why I'm making friends with this tasty green liquid."
Good. The big guy was injured, but still standing. Well, probably, depending on how much of that bottle he put away. Reva was in pain, but it was dying down as the stim kicked in. "We need to get out of here," I said over the comm.
"We need to move up,"
Reva replied, leading out of the space next to us and prying a gun off one of the dead orcs. I looked at the elevators. Their security shutters had dropped. I could open them. I just didn't know how long it would take. I had no idea how Fia had moved up through the levels so fast. Possibly Eve had assisted her in some manner. "Let's get closer. First things first. We'll pick up Drinky McTipsy on the way."
"I resent that,"
Hercule replied, after a hefty belch. We crawled and stopped in fits and starts as we tried our best to keep our heads down, moving towards the bar and then onwards to the elevators, doing our best not to attract unwanted attention. Shaky wasn't even my concern anymore. It was Fia losing interest in him and going off after an easier kill. We dove into the bar area. Hercule was there, a mostly empty bottle in his hand. "Is that absinthe?" He shrugged.
"I don't know."
He held the bottle at arm's length and read the label.
"Oh hey, what do you know? It is."
"If you can tear yourself away from your pain relief for 5 minutes, we're leaving." He reached for a beer.
"I can do both."
Though seeing the damage to his arm, it was operational, but it sparked and smoked from a dozen bullet holes. And the wound in his leg through his pants, he had stopped the bleeding with some good old seal and squeal. I did wonder how far and how much good he could do. I just need to open the doors first. We all turned to look at the elevators as the sound of a polite ding came from that direction. The center one was opening, both the security shutter and the door. Well, that's ominous, Reva said quietly. I looked up at the ceiling and around at the many security cameras. Eve? I had to hope it was the AI trying to be helpful and not a trap. I got to my feet, making a choice. That's our cue, one way or another. We ran for it, Hercule doing his best to move at speed. I made it to the doors and stopped to look back at the fight raging in the foyer. Fear had torn the gun arm from the suit and was now dodging wild slashes from the integrated electro axe. She was so clearly toying with him now, her speed superior, her strength undeniable. I almost felt sorry for him. Goodbye, Shaky. I ducked into the elevator as the doors slid shut. It's been fun. We stood panting in the elevator as it rose through the many levels. She's gonna kill him, isn't she? Reva asked somberly. She won't stop until she's got to the soft and chewy center, I said, admittedly a little tasteless. I did worry what would happen when he was eventually dead and she had nothing else to play with. With any luck, she would lay down and take a nap and shift back. Worst case, Sierra's staff would call in the DCP. They would come and take her down. Eventually.
Do we know what's happening here?
Hercule said, motioning vaguely at the elevator. The lights flickered for a second as though in response to his question. I laid a hand on the control panel and delved into the immediate system. There was action there, beyond what it should have. It was sporadic but very clean. It must have been Eve. It's the AI. Fear must have let her out before she came looking for us. She's in the building now.
That's good.
Hercule looked worried as he cast his gaze about the cameras above us, as if he was expecting Eve to drop us down the shaft. We had all heard stories of unhinged AIs going on killing sprees for no apparent reason. The truth was that no AI was made flawless. It was impossible, and eventually the code hit an error. Then it wouldn't know how to fix the problem and it would reject outside help from fear of being shut down. After that, it would build more flawed logic on its corrupted code. Worst case, the corruption would spread and the AI would express itself in an erratic nature. I hoped as hell Eve was stable enough to see us through this mission. After that, I could care less. I eyed the security camera in the corner of the ceiling. It's okay, she's on our side, I said with confidence I didn't actually feel. And she's very helpful, Reva put in with exaggerated sincerity. The lift shuddered and then stopped dead. All of us were shaken off our feet at the sudden halt. I was being sincere, Reva cried out, trying to steady herself. I ran a diagnostic, my hand pressed against the control panel as I got back to my feet. It's not Eve. Someone took back control. Figures, Sierra would have some of the best jackers in the state. I tried to worm my way into the system, but someone was actively pushing me back. I was confident I would be able to break them, but it would take me a hot minute to beat them back.
Where are we?
Hercule asked, hitting every button on the control with his chunky metallic fingers. He was probably the kind of guy that hit a computer when it froze up, too. Fuck, I swore under my breath. We're almost there. Penthouse is only 4 floors up, I said, starting to form an attack against my unseen opponent. So close, yet so far. So we're sitting ducks then? Reva asked. Just as I was about to delve into cyberspace, I pulled up short. I thought I could hear something. A hissing? Was that decompressed air? Guys. Reva was backing into the center of the elevator, eyes down, watching the corners of the mirrored box. She sounded panicked, and I let the menus drop away to see the yellow gas that was pouring in fast. It billowed and swirled around our feet as we moved.
Time to leave.
Hercule deployed his blade, jamming it in the gap in the doors. They cracked and whined as he forced the blade between them and then gave it a twist. A crack, the barest slither, but it was better than nothing. I slipped my fingers in and began to pull one side. I could feel my mechanical arms straining against the back pressure, but they were giving way by degrees, just not fast enough. The gap widened and Hercule forced his hands to the other side. I could hear the whirring of servo motors as his damaged arms struggled to meet the challenge.
Just budge, you mother!
He hissed between breaths. Come on! The gas was rising, faster now. Even with some pouring out of the gap we had created, it was filling up quicker than we could empty it. Reva was starting to cough from the wisps that curled around her face, eddies stirred up by our movements. Every time she did, her ribs shot with pain, forcing her to clutch her side, bend forward instinctively. It only made it worse. I paused my progress just long enough to grab her with one hand and pull her to the gap, forcing her face to the slender opening. She breathed in lungfuls of clean air from the shaft beyond. Still, it wouldn't be much longer before we were all clustered around that gap, gasping for our lives. Sparks issued from the bullet holes in Hercule's forearm. He winced in pain, but didn't relent. Throwing his weight into it more than I could, I began to gasp for air myself, the gas reaching me at last. The big orc, a whole head taller than me, was safe for a few more precious seconds. I couldn't help it. I began to shake, the toxic fumes affecting me. I couldn't keep this up. My eyes began to water and sting, and I stopped myself from letting go my grip to reach up and rub them. Hercule pulled my face to the gap with one huge hand, then replaced it on the side I had desperately been trying to pull back. A roar of pain, the anger and the fear, his back muscles being pushed to their limits, his arms going past their max load rating. I half expected them to blow apart. Just as the gas began to tickle his chin, swirling seductively around his neck, something gave way and the doors shot apart. Yellow fumes falling away into the void between the doors and the shaft wall. Yet they still clung to our clothes as I lifted Reva to grab onto the lip of the next floor, barely protruding out from under the doors that led to safety of the floor above us. That pair of doors gave way under Reva's forceful intentions a lot easier than the elevator had. She pulled herself up and onto the polished tiled floor, laying prone and breathing heavy. She spun about, reaching back for me with one hand. Once we both lay on the cold marble, we managed to pull an exhausted and half-broken Hercule up to join us. Solid floor and clean air. It made you thankful for the little things. The three of us lay there panting, gasping, eyes on the ceiling. The feeling of relief was palpable. Well, it was while it lasted. My bad. I let my guard down. Don't move. Motherfucker. I just couldn't catch a break. Slowly, I tilted my head, looking down the length of my body, past my feet, to the squad of 6 fully loaded, fully armed security. Well, let's be honest, they were closer to private military with that kind of kit. I let my head fall back to the tiles and sighed. Hercule swore under his breath. Fuck my life. I held up a finger. Just give us a moment, okay? The sound of advancing footsteps, a gruff, stern voice, with just a hint of asshole. No can do. Get to your feet slowly. I took another glance at them. Their carbines pointed squarely at us, 2 on each target. They each had a sidearm and a knife, plus a few other odds and ends. Well, we did need to replenish our lost kit.
Are those grenades?
Hercule asked, head tilted up, eyeing the leader.
Shut up and move it.
The leader took a couple of steps forward. I groaned, but rolled gently to one side and started to get to my feet. Sarge, one of the others, spoke up tentatively.
What is it, Private?
I put one hand on my knee, pushing myself up. Didn't she say to keep back? The leader didn't take his eyes off me.
Did I ask for your opinion, Private? How are we meant to cuff them from back here?
There was an awkward silence. But Lady Ptolemy said, the 3 of us put our hands behind our heads, nice and slow.
Shut up! Get your cuffs!
He grinned an asshole grin.
And since you're so concerned, you can cuff them.
The private lowered his weapon and began to fumble at his belt with his offhand. I grinned a predatory grin. You should listen to him. The sergeant's gun pivoted to me.
One more word and you'll be breathing through a whole new hole.
Let's be honest, they did have the drop on us. I couldn't summon any magic. This fucker was twitchy as hell, and I'd be eating lead as soon as the yellow lit my palms. That didn't mean we're out of options, but I wanted to keep this particular option up my sleeve for later. Still, needs must. The private was right though, they should have stayed back. He should have listened. I felt the shock radiate through my body, an electrical wave stimulating every nerve as my Hermes burst to life. I broke into a run from a standing start, my hand parting at the same time as my punch dagger slid free. I cleared the first few meters without issue. They hadn't even blinked yet. But as my next footfall touched down, I felt it. A ping of sorts, deep in the mechanics of my left leg. Oh shit. The damage I'd taken from that Harlequin jacker, the subpar repairs. I hadn't had time to get them properly done yet. I was running on spare parts. These legs couldn't take the stress. The extreme speeds I was subjecting them to was too much. I wasn't going to make it. Even with the fool leading the squad closer, I was going to come up short. I could feel the loss of control as my next step moved down to meet the tiles, but it was too late. I couldn't change course. I couldn't stop with any measure of control. My legs gave out. I tumbled out of my high-velocity transit, my speed carrying me into the squad, and I collided with the arrogant wanker with the sergeant's stripes on his shoulder. We fell to the ground, tangled in a heap, the rest of the squad stepping back out of our way or tripping over their own feet in an attempt to get clear. Neither of us had expected it. To his credit, he was a fast thinker. His hand dropped from his carbine to his sidearm in a split second. Fortunately, I had a weapon closer to hand. My punch dagger took him in the throat. My other hand pushed his away, grasping for his pistol. It only took his squad mates a couple of seconds to realize their leader was dead, and their reason for not unloading their clips on me was fully neutralized. Barrels pivoted in my direction. Here's the thing, I might not have been able to run fast anymore, but I could still move fast. I activated the Hermes a second time, in the most uncoordinated and awkward way, but thankfully no one could see it. I scrambled and tumbled just far enough from their aim that their bullets only shredded the torso of their now deceased sergeant. They practically cut him in half. Unfortunately, the sudden gunfire and the blood spray had stopped me from being able to steal his pistol. I hadn't managed to get my hands on his sidearm in time. It tumbled from my now blood-slick fingers while I did my best worm impersonation, sliding on the floor to get out of the line of fire. Weaponless, 2 bursts fully spent, I only had one more card I could play. Before I ran out of stolen time in the final seconds the Hermes gave me, I summoned my magic. One hand delving into the pouch on my belt and 2 fingers touching the now familiar black leather book. I hadn't yet dared to try this. If I was being honest, truly, I was afraid of what would happen. If there was a time and place to start pushing boundaries, though, it was now. My father had said that this way madness lay, but all I felt while the yellow hieroglyphics encased my hand, wrist, and arm was power. To hold the book without touching my magic was like licking a battery. There was a tingle there. But to lay just 2 fingers on it while I summoned my spells, it was like filling my veins with wine and fire. I knew as soon as I had touched it, a physical connection wasn't needed anymore. Only the initial connection had been necessary. It was a conduit to power, and it was all mine, completely, and forever. I could sense it. I could feel its presence. As long as it lay nearby, I could drink from a well of power so deep it felt like it had no bottom. I'd always been told that a cipher manifested their own powers. We didn't channel it. We didn't feed from external sources. This tome broke all the rules. It rewrote the laws of magic. Only once before had I felt this kind of power, back in the Reaper's Garden, and I remembered how to use it. The speed of the Hermes fell away. I hardly even felt the temporal whiplash. I raised both my hands, rings of glowing symbols flowing over my fingers and writhing. With my mind, I reached out for the two closest targets. They froze in their movements for a split second, then adjusted their aim. I locked eyes with one of them. I could see fear there, the realization that he was no longer in control of his own body. Both him and his companion mowed down their fellows without even blinking. Fabric, blood and bone plastered the walls either side. Their Kevlar was no use at such close range. They were, in every sense of the word, dead meat. I sat there panting awkwardly, crouched on the floor. I left the two puppets standing, frozen like statues, flanking me as I got to my feet, limping and slipping slightly on the now wet tiles. It had all happened so quickly that Reva and Hercule had barely had time to react. In each moment, beginning to react and then having the situation change so quick, they could never truly do anything meaningful. Flinching back at first, moving forward to assist me, then flinching back again at the gunfire. The three of us stood there, staring at each other. Hercule spoke up first.
What the fuck was that?
He took a few steps forward, eyeing the two remaining security. You have them, Reva said. I nodded, not letting the magic go, my arms still ringed in light. I looked down at my hands, flexing my fingers. It's incredible. Hercule advanced and poked one of the puppets in the chest. He rocked slightly.
So what do we do with these two?
Hercule asked, giving my puppet another prod in the chest. What do you mean?
Well, can we take them with us? Some backup?
I reached down and picked up a pistol out of the carnage, then a carbine off the ground. Load up, I said, ignoring the question. I don't want to risk losing control. Reva tentatively picked up a couple of clips and tucked them into her belt. Hercule collected the grenades he had spotted earlier.
You gonna knock them out or something?
My hand rested on the pouch that held the book. Or something. My fingers twitched. The two men raised their guns to point them levelly at each other's heads. Hercule took a step back. Reva turned on me. What the fuck? What? They're helpless. They're practically prisoners. I could feel her emotions. She was pissed. I was falling back into the groove of a wetwork specialist. You didn't take prisoners. You didn't leave witnesses. They know what they signed up for. As far as I'm concerned, they're complicit.
Come on, man, that could be useful,
Hercule put in, trying a different tact. We don't need them. What if I lose control and they turn on us? You can't just kill them in cold blood, Reva objected. I spoke through gritted teeth. Watch me. You're better than this. I had my response ready. I was about to risk letting them gun each other down. I ground my teeth, pissed off at myself and the situation. Fuck it. She was right. I had the ability to just knock them out. I focused all my will on the two soldiers. I snapped my fingers and they crumpled to the floor unconscious. Reva let out a tense breath. Listen, I'm not taking prisoners. I'm not holding back during combat. I'm not slowing down to try and knock these assholes out. We're here for a job. They're here to kill us. It's us or them. Got it? It was delivered more harshly than was necessary. Reva still looked a little uncomfortable. Hercule shrugged. In the end, she relented and gave me a nod. Got it. Don't get it wrong. I pointed to the bodies on the ground. These guys aren't any better than a ganger or a punk on the street. They just have better uniforms and health care. She shook herself. Sorry, I know. It's just, I know what it's like that. Executing them, it's just not right. We need every edge in this fight. If that means turning them against each other, I'll do it. She held up her hand, forestalling me. I know. We gotta do what we gotta do. Just try and keep it in the heat of battle. It irked me that she was pushing for this right now. Fine, I said, turning away and marching off towards the stairs that led up to the next floor. Next time, I'll just have to move faster. Thank you for listening to Cyphers Edge. Subscribe so as not to miss future episodes. New episodes uploaded every second Saturday. Script and narration by JJ Brandis. Music was provided by Cale McLeish. Copyright JJ Brandis 2025.